Hey, Jordan O'Connor here. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the best biography and autobiography books that I have read. So, here they are. Try not to drop them. There's a bunch of them here. So, I'm going to walk through some of my favorites and just tell you a little bit about them. You've probably seen these books before, but some of them you might not have. I recommend reading them all. Book number one, and these are not in order, by the way, these are just how I took them off my bookshelf, is Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc wasn't the founder of McDonald's, but he's the one that expanded it and franchised it, where they now have like 15,000 stores just in America. Absolutely crazy. There's a movie on this as well. However, the book is always better, so recommend reading the book. Super, super easy read, and you'll be absolutely addicted to it. Next is Sam Walton, Made in America. This is about the founder of Walmart. Once again, such a good book. A couple of things I remember from this. At one point, he was in South America and he got arrested because he was going around with a measuring tape, measuring the distance between the aisles, because he was just so obsessed with his competition, but also how he can just make his store better and how he can push it back to the customers where the customers are going to save money. Like it was his ultimate goal. And he was just so humble. Like when he was the richest man in the world, he just done everything the same way as he done it before, right? Didn't have much of an ego or anything like that. Like he went to the same barber shop, he brought his dog around, and he just drove like some old truck, right? Really, really good. And then someone learned from Sam Walton and was absolutely obsessed with this book. And that person is Jeff Bezos. So the next book is The Everything Store. So at the start of this, Jeff Bezos talks about how he used to carry around this book in his pocket, and it was basically like his Bible. So this is a good book as well. At the start of it, it's much more interesting. As the book goes on, I lost a bit of interest. Now, I did finish the book, but there's a lot of stuff about investors, shareholders, boardroom meetings and stuff like that, which I read this a couple of years ago. It didn't interest me too much back then. Now, I know there is different versions of this now, but really, really good book as well. Obviously, Jeff Bezos is one of the richest people in the world, and he has a funny sense of humor as well. So really good. And a common theme here, I'll talk about it a little bit further on, but a common theme is like a lot of these billionaires, they all build multiple different things that are worth billions, right? Which I'll talk about for one of the next books. So I'll do that next. So the Steve Jobs book from Walter Isaacson, really, really good. Now, Steve was weird in his own ways. He didn't wear deodorant, didn't wear shoes most of the time, and I'm pretty sure at one point he had like a carrot-only diet or something like that. He was a little bit strange and he was like really rude to people, but he was an absolute operator and a serious entrepreneur. It's unfortunate that he's not still around, but a couple of things I learned from this book was just about hiring like top quality talent, like how important it is. And another thing I learned from Steve, which I actually didn't know, is just his story and how he went on to start Pixar, which is like Pixar movies. He done that while he was also building Apple. And then he sold Pixar to Disney, and then he became the biggest shareholder of Disney stock, which is just absolutely crazy. And this was almost like his side thing. Like most people don't know that Steve Jobs built Pixar and sold to Disney. Like most people just think it's Apple. And also, you probably know this already, but he also got kicked out of Apple, and then he built another company, and then that was his way then to get back into Apple, right? Really, really interesting. This book is a beast. It is very big. Let me see. It's like 500 pages, but the words are like extremely small. But this is a really good book. You can see I have a bunch of highlights in here. Highly recommend this. Next is Elon Musk's biography. So there's two of these now. This author, Walter Isaacson, they have also wrote a book now about Elon. However, I do have it on my bookshelf, but I've not read it yet. So this is really, really good. Like the Elon story is crazy. You might already know it, but he made so much money and he just dumped every single bit of it back into more companies. Like when he sold PayPal for like 50 or 100 million, he then put it all into Tesla and SpaceX, right? Like absolutely crazy. And Elon is just ruthless as well when it comes to deadlines, when it comes to getting stuff done. But same again, like he's a little bit weird in his own way. Obviously Elon has much more of a personal brand now. When I read this, when it first came out, he wasn't as active online. He's like a bit of a celebrity figure, I'd say now. But really good book, definitely worth reading it. Or you can read the newer one from Walter Isaacson, which is probably better, to be fair. Next, more billionaire biographies, to be fair. So there's two of these, two of Richard Branson's autobiographies. These are absolutely crazy. Once again, very big books, very long reads, but super, super interesting. This one talks about his journey from like a kid up until, I'd imagine, like his 30s, I would say. I read this years ago now, but so good. Like his early days, Richard Branson's early days, like he was just an operator. Like the things he was doing, he bought his first island when he was like 21. He brought someone on a date and he said that he was going to buy an island just to get a free helicopter ride. And then he actually bought the island then a couple of years later. And then like how he started Virgin Airlines was he couldn't get home from an island one year. And then he just made a couple of phone calls, realized that he can hire a plane for X amount. And then he just made a sign in the airport because his flight was delayed. And then he just like booked up the flight. And then he decided to start an airline company. So he has like 400 companies, Richard Branson. So he's an absolute operator. And then his new autobiography is Finding My Virginity. First one is Losing My Virginity, then Finding My Virginity. And he says he's going to write one more. So just so good. This talks more about the different things he's achieved. Like one thing I like about Richard Branson is he's like an explorer and he just does crazy stuff. Like he traveled around the world on a hot air balloon. He's done a bunch of different crazy fitness challenges, like on top of running 400 companies and having like 70,000 employees, probably more, probably like 100,000. He's also doing like these extreme events, right? And he does these and he's not getting any younger, right? And obviously this talks about his space company as well, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. Highly recommend this book as well. Obviously read the other one first. I'll switch it up a bit because I don't want to just list out all the billionaire biographies here. The next is The Cult of We. This is a madness, this book. So this is about WeWork, the basically rise and crash of WeWork. And there's an Apple documentary on this, which is so good, called We Crashed. So you can watch that either. But this book is just mental. Like WeWork was almost just like a pump and dump. They branded themselves as a tech company, even though they were a real estate company. But the founder, Adam Newman, is just an absolute character. Like he is crazy. The culture they built inside their company was just absolutely wild. The parties, how much money they spent. Like honestly, this is one of those books where you just like laugh throughout. Like you can't comprehend it. You can't believe it. Like he's just raising so much money and just wasting so much money at the same time. Like I think at one point they were spending like a million quid an hour or something ridiculous, or like 100k every minute. Like just absolutely wild. I forget all the numbers and the facts here, but definitely recommend reading this book. I think I read it like last year. So good. I became obsessed. I watched like all of his documentaries. I read the book. There's a bunch of other stuff that I kind of looked into. It was so good. Next, I don't even know if you'd call this a biography, but Living with a Seal by Jesse Itzler. So Jesse Itzler, I think he's the founder of Marquis Jet, and he also built and sold a coconut water company to Coca-Cola, and he's done a bunch of other stuff. His wife owns the company Spanx. I actually seen him speak at Grant Cardone's 10X event. This book is absolutely hilarious. He was, just to kind of give you an overview, basically Jesse Itzler was at this running event where he met Goggins, right? This was like way back when. If you've ever watched Goggins' first podcast with Tom Bilyeu, that's like the best podcast that Goggins has ever done, is his first one with Tom Bilyeu. And from the back end of that, when that first came out, probably like 2020 or something like that, it could have even been for it. This was like Goggins' first big podcast. He talks about his story there and when he went to run out and do his first like 100-mile run. But it was a relay race, and Jesse Itzler was doing it with all of his friends, because he does a lot of different ultra runs and stuff like that. But he was doing this 100-mile ultra relay with his friends, and Goggins was doing it on his own, and all he had was like this chair and biscuits and water, right? And he went and done the 100 miles. So after, Jesse Itzler was like, I have to figure out who this guy is. And then Jesse's like, do you want to come live with me for a month, right? So then the book is about Goggins living with Jesse Itzler. I need to reread this one. So good. It's absolutely hilarious. This was the first book that I ever like proper like just laughed at all the time. So then next, kind of similar, is Finding Ultra by Rich Roll. Rich Roll has a really good podcast. The reason why I read this book was because I done an Ironman last year, well, an Ironman 70.3. So I wanted to just read different books that kind of got me motivated and educated me in that. So Rich Roll just talks about how he was just kind of down and out, not much purpose in life. And then he came across, he wanted to do something tough. He came across an Ironman, but instead of like doing an Ironman, he decided to do 5 Ironmans on 5 different islands in 5 days or something like that. Absolutely crazy. If you're interested in any sort of ultra endurance, highly recommend this. Like, probably one of the best books I've ever read. Honestly, when it comes, like, not a business book, probably one of the best I've ever read. So good. I could not put this down. I remember I was spending like 3 hours a day reading this book just to get through it. Like, unbelievable. Next, back to more popular ones, is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Pretty sure this is the first ever autobiography that I read. This is, what did I call it? Shoe Dog? Yeah, I'm not sure if I said that, but Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. So good. So Phil Knight is the founder of Nike, but he just talks about like what he had to go through to start a brand. Like nowadays you can literally just like set up an e-commerce store in the space of like an hour and you can have ads live and you can be making money. Like he had to go to China. He had to, just absolutely grind. He used to fly around the country and sneak Nikes into like his military kit so he could fly around the country for free and get stuff delivered. Like, so good. Such an amazing story. So I highly recommend that. One of the best books as well. And then the author of this one is the same person that just read another book that I finished, which is Open by Andre Agassi. So let me get this. So if you like the style of it, then you can read Open by Andre Agassi. It's so good. So you can see it there. Open. I'm not into tennis at all, but I read that book, Open, because it was the same person that wrote this book. So generally that's the case where if someone writes a really good autobiography or a biography, then you want to see what other books they wrote and then read them because they're normally really good as well. Next is O'Leary, the guy that basically built Ryanair. Really funny, really good. Obviously, I'm in Ireland, so it's interesting to be able to read about, more Irish and not Americans or people from the UK or whatever. Really good. There is parts of this book that's talking about politics, which I had no interest in, so I just skipped that chapter. But yeah, it's quite funny as well, like the stuff he done. He was really good at like being in the media and being kind of top of mind, because Ryanair is obviously, a lot of people hate it, but people keep going back because money talks, right? So then 3 more. The next, Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So this is amazing book, especially if you're into fitness and bodybuilding. Like the start of this book is absolutely crazy. The stuff he talks about, his dedication, his work ethic. Then the second half of the book, or the kind of the last section, like the last third, say, is just all about politics, because obviously he went on to be the mayor of California. Once again, I have no interest in politics, so I skipped some of that, but I did finish the whole book, but I know I didn't have much of an interest in that. So it kind of talks about, the start of the book is the best, where he talks about fitness, and then he starts talking about like fitness. So fitness is the start and his youth, and then it goes into more business and acting, and then it goes into politics, which, like I said, the politics I don't have too much of an interest in, but really good book, especially if you're a bit of a gym lad. And then 2 more. Last one, Never Finished by David Goggins. And I'm pretty sure Goggins has another one as well, so I listened to Goggins' audiobook. So this is Never Finished, his other one then I've listened to. And then obviously there's the one with Jesse Itzler. So really, really good. What I find about David Goggins' books is they're pretty extreme and they're pretty intense. So I always recommend listening to them when you're doing hard shit. So the first time I listened to Goggins' book, I used to listen to it just walking. Then I realized like you cannot listen to this book walking, because he's talking about doing 100-mile races and like like absolutely suffering, and like the stuff his like his dad used to beat him and stuff like that. So then the first time I did my first marathon, I like went out, ran a marathon. The most I ever ran before was like 16K, and I just decided to go do a marathon. It was like the first of the year, and I listened to David Goggins doing that whole run, so it was like motivation in my ear. And then when I read that one, then because there's a first one, I can't think of the first one, but then this one never finished. I then listened to this while I was cycling doing my Ironman training. So it was really good because he was talking about ultras and stuff like that. So it gets you hyped up. But the format of the audiobook is really, really good. It's unique, where someone reads the book and then they ask Goggins questions about that kind of, about the topic that they're talking about. So it's really, really unique. And he actually was like one of the first people to do this format, and it's so good, especially like Goggins. He has such a unique voice. But Goggins is also like an operator in regards to like business and stuff like that. Like he took a bunch of risks that, you know, people wouldn't think, and he saved a bunch of money as well. And he does a lot of stuff. Goggins is a smart guy. Then the last one that I have here is The Fifth Vital from Mike Maljak. So Mike is a part of like Impulsive, one of Jake and Logan Paul's friends. This is just unbelievable. I don't even know how I bought this book or how I came across it, because I didn't really know of Mike. I honestly, I don't remember buying this book, and no one gave it to me, but I somehow came across it, and it's so bloody good. It's just different. I've like told a bunch of my friends to read this. My mom has read this as well. I think she listened to it, but it's so good. Like, for those that don't know, Mike like had a crazy life around drugs, around addiction, and this is all around the Oxy pandemic in America. But then obviously Mike, then he kind of sorted his stuff out, and then he went into like marketing, and he end up obviously being one of the co-hosts of Impulsive. But this book you just cannot put down, and it's like, it's crazy. Like Mike should not be alive. Literally, like his story is absolutely wild. But that is really it. There's probably more books that I've read. This video is much longer than expected, and I feel like every book is kind of, I'm saying the same thing. But let me summarize here. Let me see if I can, if I lift these all up, I'm probably going to drop them, right? But if I was to rank these, which I said I'm not going to do, but I probably am. So to be fair, it all depends on what your goal is. Like if your goal is fitness, then obviously I recommend reading the fitness ones. If you're in business, then yeah, I honestly recommend reading them all. Like there's no other way I can put it, because there's some other biographies that I've read that I don't rate too much, and I don't even have them here. Okay, so any book that I talk about today, I highly recommend reading it, and just read whatever kind of interests you or whatever relates to you the most. Okay, as I read more, I will share more. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other biography or autobiography book recommendations that I've not mentioned in this list, please do let me know. Right now, I'm currently reading Henry Ford's one, and there's a bunch of other ones I want to read. I want to read Trump's. I want to read the one about Starbucks. Like, there's so many more that I have to get through, but these are the ones that I've got through so far. So if you've any recommendations, let me know. If you've read these, let me know what you think about them, and appreciate you staying here for nearly 20 minutes watching this video. Give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day. Ciao.